This is, in essence, a federal invasion of the Twin Cities and Minnesota, and it must stop.
All right, y'all just heard that. They're calling ICE a federal invasion. Not enforcement, not operations, an invasion. So let's do what the media won't do. We're going to go line by line and see what they're selling. Here's what this press conference is. It's Minnesota leadership trying to turn immigration enforcement into a scary movie. And they're using 3 weapons: fear words, big numbers, and racist accusations. Let's hit the receipts.
DHS agents have sown chaos and terror across the metropolitan area and in cities across the state of Minnesota. Schools have gone onto lockdown.
Notice the language: chaos, terror, invasion. That ain't a legal argument, that's propaganda language. They're trying to make you feel first so you won't think.
In just 2 days, responding to the chaos ICE has cost the city $2 billion in law enforcement and overtime expenses. 2 days.
Stop right here. $2 billion in 2 days in overtime and law enforcement costs? That's not a little exaggeration, that's a nuclear number. If that's true, show the receipts, invoices, budget breakdown, anything. Because if you'll say $2 billion in 48 hours with a straight face, what else are you stretching?
And on January 7th, 2026, a DHS agent shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, leaving her children without a mother and her 6-year-old son without either parent. This has to stop.
Now this is where they're smart. They drop a death on you to shut your brain off. I'm not going to disrespect anyone that has passed away, but I'm also not going to let politicians use tragedy like a shield. If you're blaming DHS, prove it. Clean. Timeline, facts, body cam, court filings, not speeches.
Minnesota's non-citizen immigrant population is just 1.5%, which is half the national average. Our state's percentage is lower than Utah, Texas, and Florida's, but none of those states have thousands of federal agents swarming their streets or harming their people.
Okay, so even they admit that Minnesota doesn't have some massive illegal immigration problem. So why the hysteria? Either they're exaggerating the surge or they're admitting it's political theater. Because if it's so small, why are they screaming invasion?
But many of the people the DHS is arresting in Minnesota have no criminal history. That fits a pattern. In 2025, 93% of the people arrested by ICE had no violent criminal history, 65% had no criminal convictions at all, and randomly stopping people in the street because their skin color isn't the one that they expect or want isn't doing a thing to help public safety.
Here's the trick they use. They act like no convictions means good person and they should be here. That's not how the law works, and it sure ain't how borders work. Illegal is illegal, and plenty of people avoid convictions for years. That's reality.
I've heard the administration talk about fraud. No, not the 43 fraud convictions the president has, or the $43 million fraudsters the president has pardoned, but instead saying that ICE is here to look for fraud somehow.
Right there. That ain't about DHS. It ain't about ICE. That's not about public safety. That's a political punchline to fire up their base. When you start hearing stand-up comedy in the middle of a serious constitutional claim, you already know what time it is.
What we are seeing right now is not normal immigration enforcement. We are not asking ICE not to do ICE things. We are asking this federal government to stop the unconstitutional conduct that is invading our streets each and every day.
Listen, even half of that is true. There should be names, reports, and charges. But what I'm hearing is a pile of dramatic claims with no details or proof. That's what politicians do when they want headlines, not solutions.
Why are they in these much smaller cities in the middle of the Midwest? The answer is very clear. It is politics.
There it is. They admitted the whole angle. This ain't about public safety. This is a power fight. They're basically telling you we're a blue city and we don't want federal enforcement here. Here's my take. If DHS/ICE breaks the law, punish it. If anyone violates rights, take it to court and win. But don't try insulting people's intelligence by calling enforcement an invasion and throwing out cartoon numbers like $2 billion in 2 days, then expecting everyone to clap. And I'll tell you what else. A lot of Americans are done watching leaders defend everybody except the citizens paying the bills. Now, I want to hear from y'all. Do you believe the Minnesota leadership is telling the truth here? Or are they just using fear in politics to block immigration enforcement? And if you want, I'll do a part 2 where we isolate the 5 biggest claims and see which ones have hard proof and which ones are just speeches. At the end of the day, we voted for this, and we expect these people in Minnesota to abide by the law. We have to.